And when you look, all right, hi guys, happy afternoon. So, I want to go ahead and look at some of the paperwork that we got this weekend and that came down out of the news cycle, right? So I know no one, you okay, baby? So I know no one likes paperwork, all right, but it is really important. And when we have a whole bunch of people who aren't looking at the paperwork, that's how people in certain places get away with certain shit, right? So we have to be looking at the paperwork, and we're going to look at two things today. We are going to look at the comptroller's report that came out of CNY Central. Okay. So we are going to look at they did an article on this, and you might have caught the news yesterday evening about this document, and you can see it here in the PDF. We're going to take a closer look at that PDF, and then we're going to look at this thing called the Title I plan. So, real quick, for those of you who don't know, it basically works like this, right? The federal government sets up the laws, says these are the laws for the school and how the school system runs. And then those laws go to the state, and the state takes them and says, okay, and they make a bunch of procedures and policies for the federal laws. And then the money comes from the feds into the states, and then it goes down. And then we have regulations from the state, and then we end up down at the bottom with the superintendent and stuff, right? So the state's Title I plan is up here. It is the plan that they submit to the state, or to the feds. I'm sorry. It's the plan that the state submits to the feds to get their money for all of the education programs in New York State. And they're making changes to that. So we're going to look at the comptroller's report, and then we're going to take a brief look at that plan. Here is the comptroller's report. Okay. Missing school. And I mean, there's some nice information here in here about how the schools are responding to attendance and the different techniques they're using, right? So, here's the first page is a summary of what the report holds, okay? Then it goes into talking about attendance, how the United States Department Department of Education defines chronic absenteeism, right? And then we get into some of these numbers. So we can take a look here. New York is at 29.1%, and compared to New Jersey, at the lowest was 16.6%. The highest would be Alaska with 45%. Hawaii also fairly high at 30%, but they just had those wildfires, right? So there's probably reasons why their chronic absenteeism rate is just about as high as ours. A lot of kids are displaced still, things like that. Okay, so that's our first graph. So then it talks about the pandemic and how the pandemic did not help anything. Second graph, New York State public schools and chronic absenteeism rates from 2017-18 to 2022-23. So during the period of COVID. Um, Attendance between 90 to 89%, chronic absenteeism almost doubled, 17 to 32, right? So that definitely just about doubled between last school year. Now, some of that is that there's a reporting issue here for at least some of this because the school systems don't have great policies and procedures, right, to report during what was happening throughout 20 to 21 to 22. That's why there's a little break in the line because the state stopped collecting information when the school shut down, right? So then they came back in, and then you got to find your routine again, and you got to get used to things and all the other changes that have happened since we came back from COVID. So there's, considerations into this besides just saying that we need to go after the 32.6% of parents whose kids are chronically absent. Like, you really want, I really just don't understand the argument. Like, how are you going to bring one out of every three parents into family court? Who's got where are the judges for that? Show me a judge on their docket who has time for that. Um, High schools and elementary schools rates. So there's your graph that compares the high schools to the elementary school differences. Um, Now they did note in here that or they did note in the article that they're saying that a lot of our chronic absenteeism in Syracuse City School District is elementary kids, which is unique compared to some of the other places in the state who see a lot of kids being absent in high school. And that is, we talk. I named these segments "Unraveling the Layers of Chronic Absenteeism" because there are layers to this issue, right? So if that holds true, and if that is an actual quantifiable thing projected from our data, if more of our elementary kids are absent than our high schoolers, then we need to have that conversation and we need to look at why. And I can tell you a big part of the reason that I hear from families all the time, we don't feel safe. Okay, we will get into this with the Title One plan when we look at the Title One plan. But for elementary kids specifically, like, if my kid is having a hard time at school or my kid says she needs a mental health day, I'm giving her that mental health day up front and immediately, especially when she is, between pre-puberty and puberty. Like that is a very hard, strenuous time for a kid. And then when you get into being in a classroom with 30 other kids also going through those same types of things and one teacher, there's a safety component here. So, and I really honestly sincerely think from the feedback that I hear from families across this city, if our elementary kids are really absent, we really need to look at that safety piece of it. And why are we keeping the elementary kids home? Because it's not just parents don't want to get out of bed. That's not it. That's not the only reason why kids are staying home. There are so many others. There's safety reasons, there's laundry reasons, there's, like, and I know that the people in the agency understand that there's other reasons. But when we talk about this to the community, it always boils back to, oh, well, it starts at home. We make the decision to keep our kid home on Tuesday morning because something started on Monday, right? There's layers, lots of layers to this. Okay, so now we can look at demographics in the comptroller's report. New York City, large city, urban city, rural. And we're not reading all these numbers because we're just not. Okay, so oh, look at this chart. This chart looks very interesting. Change in high school absenteeism rates by need categories. Okay, so different types of schools have different needs. We can see here that large city schools, their chronic absenteeism changed as much as charter schools changed, right? So what about their needs was impacted so much during COVID compared to some of the other schools? Would be a question that you would ask based off of those data, right? So now we can get into our race demographics, and then our economic demographics, our students with disabilities demographics. And some of this, right, we've heard some of these conversations before. Okay, so now it's going to talk about the policy efforts, like I said, the different things that the schools are doing. And it's important here, it talks about our federal efforts, right? So what are the at the federal level, and then it goes to the state level, and then it goes into the local level. So, and we even, our name got dropped in this report. Why? Because we're one of the big five and we have $1 million STEAM school coming down and everyone's looking at District 22 right now. Anyways, um, so reduction of chronic absenteeism is the number one priority in our district comprehensive improvement plan. The district comprehensive improvement plan is not the same thing as the strategic plan. Anyways, to reduce chronic absenteeism, the district has increased and diversified communication and engagement with families, utilizing family engagement facilitators through the Office of Family Engagement. Staffing for program aides and attendance coordinators has been increased, and training provided to all staff on successful family engagement strategies. Attendance teams are coordinated at the district level, and ARPA funding has been leveraged to provide a variety array of supports to students identified as homeless. In 21-22, the district had a high school student absenteeism rate of 75%. Okay. Now, in 2023, it decreased to 57.4%. So that's helpful. Now, what are the differences between 21 and 22 and the 2023 year? Was it that we were doing virtual? Was it that there was an adjustment period after the schools shut down? Did they change something in the buildings? We don't know. But why significant reduction in high school compared to what we have going on in our elementary schools? Okay, high school is only 4 years of our program. So that's great because that's an important time because they're close to finishing the program. But is it really like, how is it? We can't be so secular when we're looking at correcting some of these absentee problems because these absentee problems stretch across our system, right? And honestly, it's probably like a good 25% of the problems we have are systems problems and communications problems. That, and then 25% is homeless, and then we got a small percentage of just laziness, right? So that is your comptroller's report. That is what it looks like. There's an appendix on here, and it basically just says, we're looking at this, we're working on this, blah blah blah. Now I want to bring your attention to these end notes because there's a lot of additional information in the end notes that is going to be helpful for our PTO groups and our family group leaders, and maybe even some of our community group leaders, depending on if your community group is looking at education. as one of your discussion points. So there's a lot of material in here. Okay, there's like 2 pages of endnotes. Now, the ones I want to bring your attention to that we're going to look at today are 17 and 18. Okay, so here's the current Title I plan for New York State. The plan that New York State sent into the feds for this school year, it's right here. There's another one here that says New York State 25-26 draft red line. And we are going to open that up tonight or this afternoon, and we are going to look at it right here. So if you want to go back and get this and read it yourself, all you got to do is go to cnycentral.com, click the thing that says view the PDF, and then you can go to the back of the document and click number 18 to see the state's title plan. Okay, now there are this plan we're about to look at is like 200 and something pages long, okay? And we're not doing that today. So I'm going to point out specific parts of the plan that are important and might be important to some of our family groups and some of our other leaders, depending on where my gauge of understanding what our interests are. Why do we need to know what's in this plan? Because this plan is parts of this plan are ways that the state is supposed to be supporting our school. And then our school is supposed to be implementing the same types of things that are in this plan, right? Like it's literally just a pass through project. And there's a couple really important pieces in this plan that we need to understand because we have some issues here in Syracuse City School District, and we need to look at them way more closely than we've been talking about them and think about them a little bit more critically than just parent bashing and pointing fingers at each other because we're never going to get anywhere. We need to strengthen our relationships with our staff. We need to strengthen our relationships with our principals and our administrators. And one of the ways we do that is by looking at the paperwork and educating ourselves so we can have some of these conversations with them. Because other words, they just think you're going, right? So let's take a look at this. All right. So here is the plan. Like I said, it's 200 pages long. Now, this plan, there is a table of contents on here. Let me find it for you. Maybe find it for you. I don't know. Um, so there's different parts of the Title One law, which is basically what the table of contents shows you. And then it's Title Two, Title Three, and Title Four. So this plan talks about all of those. That's why it's like 200 pages long because it covers all of that. Right? Now, what are the things that is important to understand? Here's the stakeholder agreement. So, this is how the state communicates with the citizens of New York State when they formulated this plan. Okay, and that's what they agree to do. Um, the first thing that I want to bring your attention to is something that the plan says on page 183. Because I found this very interesting. Let me find it. Bear with me, guys. Okay, this right here. The department believes, and research consistently demonstrates, that among school based factors, teaching matters most to improving student outcomes, and leadership is second only to classroom instruction as an influence on student learning. In the context of school-based factors, oh, that is, a reasonable statement, but it worries me personally because any other time, it always starts at home, right? There is a conversation. Can I get some cookies? Go ahead. There's a conversation. No, not that's not what I wanted to say. The federal Head Start program and the data that federal Head Start looks at, okay, says that parents and families are the first teachers. And then there's other data that says parents and families play the most significant role. So to separate parents and families, that's basically what that sentence is doing. It's saying parents and families aside, the teachers and staff are the most important. But I just wanted to point that out because sometimes these documents can be really wordy and it's a little bit confusing trying to read them all. So, in the context of in school factors, school-based factors, that's true. But it's only true because of those words in school-based factors. If you took those words out of that sentence, there's a lot of research that says families and parents are the first teachers and are the first educator that a child ever has, and that they are a huge significant factor in whether or not a child is going to be successful, right? So that is which variable that that was just a little bit much for me to. I was like, okay. It just for me that sentence reflects the attitude of of the state education department, which is okay, but troublesome if you really think that families are important and that's just you know how you play the game. Like you can't have it both ways. And when you try to have it both ways, we get into a really big mess. Okay. Discipline. There are things in the Title I plan about discipline and ways they are going to reduce discipline and what they are doing to handle discipline issues. That is on page 155, right? It talks about discipline, it talks about culture, it talks about doing climate surveys, which is how they're grading their school site culture and their school system culture. So, that is something really important for our PTOs, our parent teacher organizations, and our family groups to go ahead and take a look at so they understand that and can make themselves available for that part of the process. Um, Another thing I wanted to show you guys, I think it was on 181. This New York State is, yes, okay, so right here. New York State is supposed to be providing training resources and guidance to neglected and delinquent families regarding the implementation of STP via webinars, and online resources. And we're going to pause here and I'm going to bring this to the attention of everybody because that is foster care, that is kinship guardian, that is McKinney Vinto. That is Elmcrest Children's Center. So if your uh, child that's staying in another home, your grandchild, your niece, your nephew is in any one of those things I just listed for whatever reason, there are training resources coming from the state level for you guys specifically to help with the ways that your child's educational program is unique and different to meet your needs. So I found that very interesting because I've never heard of any of those things, and I've been around. I have extended family who deals with foster care. So I don't know where those trainings resources are, but we have a huge need for that in Onondaga County for our families here. And there's a whole bunch of stuff. That's not the only thing that is coming out of the state to support uh, youth who are neglected, delinquent, or at risk. Okay, now we talk about youth who are neglected, delinquent, and at risk all the time. Okay, they're stealing cars and they're breaking into stores and then this and then that and then this and then that. So here is, there are some things here in this state plan which should be considered when we're having those conversations and looking on ways to repair that part of our community relationship and deal with those specific challenges. um the next thing and the final thing I want to, oh no, two more things I want to look at tonight in this state plan. Let's go ahead and look at attendance, right? Because this is an attendance video. So everything you see in the red line is stuff that they're taking out. If it's crossed out in a red line, they're taking it out. If it's underlined in red, they're adding it or considering adding it for the next school year. Okay. Now I'm not going to read all of this to you because it's a lot to read, but it is here. And everybody, PTO presidents, principals, teachers, neighbors, grandmothers, grandfathers, should be coming in and reading what the state is doing here because they are changing the ways they're grading our attendance. Okay, so the attendance data from last year is not going to be comparable to the attendance data next year if these plans go through. Not going to be comparable because you're using two different metrics now. Okay, and New York State does this a lot. They do it a lot. And this is one of those really hard conversations because we're talking about systems, okay? And we're talking about the school system in this particular part of the conversation in a very big place at the state level. So before we talk about it, like in the home, then we talk about it attendance at the school site. Then we talk about attendance in quadrants when we talk about our attendance committees. Then we talk about attendance in the district when we talk about Syracuse City School District, then we can do county, right? And that if we wanted to. And then we go to state. So we are in a big, high, wider range part of the systems conversation. Okay. And when they are changing the metrics, the way they change them, it comes with good and bad. Now, if you look at this document, okay, if you look at this, what page am I on? Oh, I went the wrong way. If you look at, well, then you have to wait a second. If you look at this document, okay, and you look at what they're changing, it looks, on surface value, it looks good because if you came in and tried to read these charts, and you didn't have any knowledge of how to read this, you would be confused. What is 2010 20 M 20 MIP or 21 MTP? Right? You would be confused trying to read those and understand those things. So kudos on this hand for making it easier to understand. Okay, so our new the way that it's reading attendance now looks like, I think it's the other way. It is the other way. It's really simple. It looks just like our report cards. You're either going to get a 1 or 2 or a 3 or a 4. Okay? And it goes down to students. Students get a 1 or a 2 or 3 or 4 for attendance. And then that's it. And then the way they explain it, it's designed to right there. Okay? We're looking at it now. For the purposes of school differentiation, the department will, why didn't it do that? Zoom in. Where's my Zoom? Hold on, guys. My Adobe Reader is really slow. My computer does not like it. But I just bought it, so I'm trying to use it. Okay, so all that stuff is getting taken out, and then right there. Okay, so and it comes in kind of two ways. Okay, so you're gonna have the percent of days you miss. If you miss 85 days or 85% or less, you're level 1. If you miss 85.1 to 90% of school, you're level 2. If you miss 90.1% to 95%, you're level 3. And greater than 95% you're 4. So those are based on the days you're in the building. All right. So if you're there more than, if your kid is there more than 95% of the time, your attendance grade is going to be a 4. If your kid is there 85 or less percent of the time, your attendance grade is going to be a 1. Okay. And then they're going to do something else. After they know how many 1s, 2s, and 3s or 4s they have for the kids, they're going to plug them into that formula you see on your screen. The number 2s plus a weighted amount of number 3s plus a weighted amount of number 4s over the total number of students greater than and equal to 30 days, which is we're averaging, right? Okay, so then when you get that, then the school gets graded as a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4, according to that math problem you see on your screen, right? So that is how they're now going to weigh attendance. That's how they're looking at weighing attendance for next year. And I think this plan is said for this year. I might have saw something that said they were planning on keeping this for a couple of years, but they really have to figure out if they're going to keep it and keep it. Okay? Because it is fantastic that we have a way to quantify attendance right now that everybody can understand. I like that part. But what I don't like is that I cannot, as of next school year, I'm not going to be able to take next school year's attendance numbers and weigh it and compare it to where we were the first year we returned from COVID and where we were before COVID. Okay, cannot accurately track these things because the state keeps changing them and it's annoying. Okay, there are not many times that I agree with members of administration, but there have been members of our administration who have sat at the school board who have tried to explain CSI and TSI schools, which is also in this plan, okay, that talks about how much learning is happening in the building, okay, CSI, TSI, targeted school improvement, whatever. There's like 4 different acronyms, okay? They've changed those definitions so many times that you can't compare them. You just can't compare them. Okay. And they're going to change them again. And this school plan for next year, they um in this school plan for next year, they're changing them again. So when our commissioners, when the people in our community who really care about education say, well, I want to know how many years behind this school on the south side hasn't been performing well. How many years in a row has this not been performing well? Our superintendent and our operations officers can't give them an answer because the state keeps changing it. So it's not comparable. You're not comparing apples to apples. You're not comparing oranges to oranges. You're comparing fruit from Florida to apples from New York. It just doesn't match out right. And it's hard. It's hard to track progress. It's hard to compare. It's hard to isolate the things and the problems that we need to work on when they're constantly changing this. So I'm really happy we have that new attendance definition, right? And everybody needs to know it, and everybody needs to understand what it is, so we can talk about it and use it, and everybody can get on the same page. But uh, beyond that, we need to make sure that when we are making these kinds of changes, that they are worth the risk. We need to make sure that they're worth the risk, because sometimes they're not going to be worth the risk. CSI, TSI, I don't know who's doing that at the state, but on behalf of my Board of Education, I'd like to ask you to stop, because we need to be able to track these things a little bit better, and we can't do that when we're dealing with so many changes all the time. So thank you for making our attendance program, our attendance definition easy, and I hope you keep it that way, please, because when we are constantly changing these things, we're not going to be able to compare. And I'm saying all the time that we are in that fresh new window from COVID-19 to where we can restart some things and move forward. And this is a good time to make that attendance change. Please keep in mind that constantly changing these acronyms and the definitions to them is not always as helpful as it is with the attendance today. Talk to you guys later.